time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Packer Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. Host Mike Adams sitting in the cabin tonight on a Wednesday evening with none other than Dan DeFaw.
Dodging the raindrops here in Michigan.
Yeah, we've had a few the last couple of days, a couple frog stranglers, as they call them.
My grass is turning green. Great.
That means it's time to get to work. Speaking of getting to work, let's jump
do
into
it.
tonight's show, man.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about our supporters. First one we're going to come out of, we're going to talk about Buck Baits. You go to buckbaits.com. If you want 20% off your order, and you got to get your order in because we're heading straight into the seasons here, go to buckbaits.com. UNJ20 gets 20% off your order. And if you haven't been out there needing those Easy Cut products, get over to easycutproducts.com. It'll get you 15% off your order if you use UNJ15 off. Packer Max, not too late. Get over there, check out packermax.com. Use the promo code UNJ25. That'll get you $25 off your order. Island Armory. Get over to their website, folks. They're continuously adding things. Give Natalie a call if you don't see it. Ask her if they can get it. Go to theislandarmory.com. Use the promo code UNJ10 when you check out. You'll get 10% off your order. We just talked about goose season. Why not a deer grunt call? JPOGameCalls.com. Check them out. Use the promo code UNJ10. You'll get 10% off your order. And last but not least, voted best in Southern Michigan by WDIV Channel 4 in Detroit, Deer Camp Roasting Coffee and Outfitters. Go check out their brick and mortar store at 15 in Dodge Park. If you go to deercampcoffee.com, you use the promo code UNJ10, you'll get 10% off your order. And don't forget to buy a bag of Up North Journal
Medium blend. That's what we're drinking here in the cabin tonight.
There you go.
Got a picture from up north up for me?
I do.
What are we looking at tonight?
We're looking up in Newberry, and I think they might be delivering a fresh batch of Deer Camp coffee to ciders.
You know, it's August. There's no snow on the ground yet up there.
Right?
It's coming.
It's partly cloudy. It's a little cool up there. It's in the 70s. But I tell you what, shout out to FM 123 for carrying our show up there.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, you ready to get in with it tonight?
I absolutely am.
It is that time of the year. We've been talking a little bit about deer hunting. It's on everybody's mind. Everybody's out shooting, tuning their bows, getting to the gun range, all that kind of good stuff.
You know what? And you go and do all that stuff. You think you pull off the perfect shot. Maybe you don't.
Yeah.
So when is the best time you might want to think about using a dog?
Time to call the dogs out?
Who let the dogs out?
All right. None other than Robert Miller from Miller Deer Tracking Dogs. Robert, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, it's glad to have you here. You know, we talked a lot before the show, and got a lot of cool stuff to talk about tonight.
Absolutely. It's a great shout out to you for what you do. Talking in the pre-show that we were doing, you're not even much into hunting because you're doing so much of the tracking with Sarge, one of your dogs. But why don't you give us a little background of you and how you got into this about 15 years ago?
Well, back then I was a huge archery hunter, predominantly traditional archery hunter, and I never had big leases to hunt on. I hunt a lot of public property, and actually had a crack at my first mature buck, and unfortunately I did a shoulder shot, wounded him, and spent 3 days trying to find him.
Oh, man.
In that 3 days, I also tried finding a tracking dog because I read an article back in the day about tracking dogs in New York, and there was no dogs back then. And a couple of guys that had dogs were far away, basically no experience. It just wasn't an option. So after the broke heart of not finding that deer, I told my wife, I said, I'm getting a dog, and never looked back.
What was your first dog that you obviously you must have did some homework to find out the right dog to get?
So my first dog was a miniature dachshund, a long-haired dachshund. His name was Scout. Going back to the article I told you I read about, was about wire hair dachshunds used in New York. So at that point, I couldn't afford the amount of money they were getting for those breeds. So I just went in and got a local dog out of Detroit. No hunting pedigree to it. It was just simply a pet pedigree. And I took Scout and just started training by ideas that I come up with, because I have no background of training of dogs. So I just decided to start, dragging deer legs around and things like that. And that's how we started, and really went into it green as could be. Oh, I got dogs coming out.
Yeah, it's okay. I thought we
Hold
heard
on.
them.
Yeah.
Stars of the
I'm
show.
going to have to let them in. They're going to scratch the truck. Hang on.
That's all
Sorry
right.
about
Well,
that.
let's make them rock stars.
Right? They're going to be part of the show whether they like it or not.
Gotta like that.
Right? Exactly. That's whole part of this. These are the stars of the show. And like he said, it started 15 years ago for him, and he knew nothing about this except an article.
Well, it's actually it's something that's just really come around here in the last, I would say, 10 years that I've really heard about it. So,
Well, that's it, right? Like you said, 15 years ago, there was really nothing about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it just started to gain notoriety that, hey, you can get a dog to help you find your deer. What a bonus.
yeah, absolutely. So you just took it upon yourself really just to kind of learn how to teach a dog how to track deer then. I mean, is it kind of like
Yep.
growing like with the shed hunting dogs? I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but they've all kind of come on the scene about the same time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, a lot of training's all basically the same thing, man trailing to everything. There's levels of training of introducing scent, the obedience work, the reading of the dog. A lot of it's all the same fundamentals. So I like to say it's not really rocket science to train a tracking dog or a shed dog or a man trailing dog. You just have to understand the basic principles of introducing the target scent that you want the dog to track, praise the dog for finding what you want it to find, and then as the dog grows and matures, you just keep increasing that scent, distance, and time, making it more challenging for the dog to problem solve. And then after, most dogs don't get good to about 3-4 years old.
Okay.
So this isn't something, there are some superstar dogs that come out at 6-7 months old and do really well.
Mm-hmm.
But on average, it's a couple years process before you get a dog that really stays focused and can start really recovering deer.
Okay, that was my next question was going to be, once you start training a dog, how long is it before it becomes, adequate to get them in the field and start getting on a track and actually recovering deer?
Yeah, for my case, I've never had that easy button dog, 1 year old finding 30, 40 deer. I know a couple guys that have those dogs.
Mm-hmm.
All my dogs seem to be really high prey driven for rabbits, squirrels, birds, and there's a lot of what I call trash breaking involved through maturity. And a lot of my dogs don't really get good to probably 3 years old, I would say, is where I'm really starting to find a lot of deer with that dog.
Okay. Well, so you started, dragging deer legs around, things like that, getting them on scent. So when you're out there and you put them on a track, how does the dog distinguish from one deer versus another? I mean, obviously deer are real keen on scent, and I know dogs are too, but I know deer can tell, they have a more discriminate nose, I would say. But you put them right where the shot placement was, right where the deer was shot, and put it on that scent and then let it go? Does it know to track that deer versus another one that might cross its path?
Yeah, you nailed it exactly. You want to get to the shot placement because what you have at the time of the animal is shot, we call it a scent dump.
Okay.
The deer gets shot, he takes the first burst of run or movement, and that's a real dump of scent. That's a real heavy volume of scent right at that one particular spot. And then as the deer is descending and going further away and dying, the scent trail only increases as the deer goes through its adrenaline phase, its stress phase, its dying phase, and the skin cells start rapidly falling off that white tail, and the scent trail gets greater and greater and greater until they find the deer. Now, if you look to a deer, let's say it's a superficial wound, like say a shoulder shot that's maybe not even a broken shoulder, just very minimal penetration, you have the scent dump, and then as the deer's running, he's spooked, he's alarmed, and then he goes out there 200 yards, he stops, looks back, licks his wounds, and is like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
And then he might slightly trot off or walk off, but he realizes he's fine. And now that scent trail went from the scent dump, heavy, now it goes to weak, to back to a deer that's just blended in with the herd.
Okay.
At that point, that's where the dogs will really lose the scent trail.
Okay. Now, looking at all that information you just give us on that, and you said you used to hunt a little bit back in the day. You had this kind of what got you into this.
Yeah.
Did you learn about those things with the deer scent in your hunting phase, or did you learn about that as you were training your dogs? I mean, where did you pick up that knowledge?
I learned everything after having dogs.
Okay.
So once I have dogs, I become obsessed about learning about weather. I become obsessed with learning about whitetails anatomy, whitetails scent glands, dog behavior, how the dog's olfactory sense of work is, dog behavior. I like to say maybe a nerd on all that because you need to learn all this stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, it all came through years of experience of tracking deer with the dogs.
Okay. Interesting.
I tell you what, it's like you said, he became obsessed with the fact. And when you trained, was it an everyday training thing, or did you give the dog a break a day or something of that effect?
I would like to refer to treating to like children playing a sport. You know, they typically practice twice a week, games on the weekend. If you take a child and you make them play football 5 days a week, they're going to get burned out.
Yep.
So same with a dog. You know, with a dog when they're younger, it's normally like once a week, twice a week training, and then there's still like little miniature drills I'll do for 5-10 minutes because you really don't want to do nothing more than 15 minutes when the dog's young. So it's a lot of just once, twice a week stuff, for 3 to 4 months, and then you might get a little heavier into the training part where you might get to 2 to 3 days a week. But once a dog kind of gets knowing its job, I really only train maybe only 5-6 times a year.
Okay.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's pretty awesome. Like you said, it almost turns out after the initial training and getting the dog up to where you think he's up to speed, then it becomes like refresher courses.
Refresher courses, because a lot of times we lay what we call a mock simulation of a wounded deer. But what we lack in that simulation is all those adrenalines, the pheromones that a live deer puts off. We can't recreate that. And ultimately, that's what our dogs learn to follow. So once your dog has learned to follow a live, wounded, dying deer, when they go to smell your man-made mock stuff, the dog simply doesn't show no enthusiasm, no excitement, and no drive to follow it. They look back at you like, you really want me to track this? I know it's kind of BS. So once a dog looks back and kind of gives you the stink eye, at that point, it's all about keeping the dog in shape, letting them be a dog, let them have an off season, let them go run the woods, let them chase squirrels, let them just be a dog.
Gotcha.
You know, like Sergeant, I just did a track. I laid a track for the pup for Friday, and I wasn't able to get to it. So Sunday morning, I had to go get all my clips out of the woods. So I told the wife, I said, this is going to take Sergeant to see what he does with it. It was a 42-hour-old scent trail. And he tracked it flawlessly like a master. And that's something I really don't train out to that timeline because that timeline really doesn't come out. You know, we're so busy. People call us so quickly now. You don't really track a 2 to 3 day old trail anymore. But I did it for curiosity, and he hammered it. So I really don't know what his max timeline is. So I think that has a lot to do with the weather. But again, back to everything. Right now, all I'm doing with Sergeant is basically running them, and letting them be a dog, letting them get in shape.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we're bumping up here on our first break.
One question before we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's hit this one question. The question is, what is the furthest state you've traveled to track a deer?
That would be Missouri.
Missouri. All right, folks. So if you are listening to the podcast or watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, and I just want to say, get over to Facebook, check out Miller Deer Tracking's Facebook page, and if you write down his phone number and you're out hunting and you need his assistance, give him a call, and he'll help you through it. If he can't get there, he'll point you to somebody that probably can help you in that situation. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knew to write down his phone number.
Absolutely. Okay, I tell you what, we're going to step outside, take our first break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Second segment of the show. We're talking with Robert Miller of Miller Deer Tracking Dogs. Kind of got an overview of the training, a little bit of the training process, the dogs and everything, and why he's into this. So let's say I shoot a deer and I try to track it. I cannot find it. I'm not getting a good blood trail. I think it's a great kill shot, and I'm telling you this. And I call you up. What's going to be the whole process of how you're going to determine whether I need your services or not? What are you going to ask me?
The first question I'm going to ask, have you recovered your arrow?
Okay.
If you have a pass through, or you believe the arrow is still in the deer.
Okay.
If you have recovered the arrow, I'm going to ask you to send me a close-up, clear images of the fletching and of the broadhead, because I want to see if the broadhead has any bent blades for any sign of deflection, or basically I'm looking for a deflection.
Okay.
So what I'm asking for the fletching is, because the fletching is like a pad that gathers detail.
Mm-hmm.
So when you shoot through a liver, when you shoot through the stomach, when you shoot through the kidneys and spleens and things like that, the fletchings will gather content going through those organs, and the color of the blood and the velocity of the blood will tell me what your arrow has went through on that whitetail.
Okay.
So once I'm able to figure that out through your arrow and through our phone conversation of what you think happened, we then can figure out a game plan on wait time and possible distance that whitetail will go on average. And that really kind of gets the ball started. So let's say, yeah, Robert, I got to pass through. You send me the arrow, and I say, you clearly got a liver shot deer. I'm going to say, Mike, we're going to wait a minimum 8 hours, preferably 12 to 14 hours.
Okay.
So then at that point, we need to look at the weather. We need to look at the size of property you're hunting to see if we need to be getting landowners' permissions. I'm going to ask for the property address so I can look at the topo of the land to kind of see which way the deer is going to probably travel from your archery stand or that you're hunting from. So I'm going to already get a mental plan together on what this whitetail is going to do through the years of tracking whitetails. I don't like to say I know it all, but I can kind of get a pretty good sense on what that deer is going to do and how far it needs to go before he wants to lay down.
Okay. So in a typical season, how many deer do you actually get on track with?
It's easy to say probably 130 and probably max around 150.
So you've tracked more deer in a season than most hunters have probably tracked in their life, I would venture to say.
For the most part, yes, sir. That's exactly what happens.
And speaking of tracking, to date, what is your longest hours of tracking? Like how long after the deer was shot that you put the track on and found them?
You're calling me out on that one, so that's a good one. It's gonna be right around that 30 to 32 hour mark.
Really?
Is our oldest recovery, and that took place up in like the Mount Morris area, and it was for the youth season. The dad, the young hunter, had a really close range shot at a deer. Fully expected to recover that deer, and then learned about us on Monday, which the season was closed. And we didn't get up there till Monday night at, I think it was like 9-10 p.m. at night, and Sarge was able to find that young man's deer.
How long did it take him to find the deer?
Well, probably maybe 30 to 40 minutes, and the deer ran straight for about 50 yards into the swamp, and Sarge missed the turn, and the deer made a hard left turn on us. So that put us into the abyss of the swamp for a good 15, 20 minutes as Sarge was trying to problem solve where the deer went. And Sarge eventually figured out he needed to backtrack himself. And once he started backtracking, he connected the dot, and the deer was less than 100 yards away.
Oh, that's amazing that a dog can pick up on something like that and figure that out and backtrack and go back to it. I mean, that just shows you, what we think about dogs and what they can really do is just simply amazing.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
It's really amazing is the shot on this whitetail was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It was with a 20 gauge, but great blood trail. But when that deer made that left-hand turn, he made a bound over top of brush off the deer run. And then so the deer is just into, just woods or swamps.
Right.
So we as humans, we're looking up and down deer runs for the blood.
Mm-hmm.
But the way this deer took this big bound, you'd be dumb luck to cut the blood trail just randomly in the swamp.
Wow.
So if the hunter was able to do that, he would have found his deer, no problem.
That's amazing.
Literally, I will tell you, with my cousin, that's how we found his 9-point. We were tracking, and then all of a sudden it was like, where did this deer go? And like he just said, it made that bound over a downed tree, and where you wouldn't think he went, that's where he went, and that's where we found him. But
happens all the time.
To hear that dog backtrack and go, wait a second, this ain't right. That's just amazing to me. And then obviously when you're watching the dog at this point, you're kind of picking up on what he's thinking then.
Yeah, I can read Sarge now phenomenal. I can tell exactly when he's lost. I can almost tell when the deer is going to be dead.
Okay.
The way he tracks, the way he moves, the way he uses his nose, and I can tell when the deer is not lethally shot. The dog really tells you everything.
Wow.
So let's say I shoot said deer. I have a pass through. I've kind of walked around the area looking for the blood, and when I decide, I better call a dog in, what's the first thing a hunter could do? Like, just first thing to call you, and then you run them through your checklist, right? That's probably the most important thing, is when I decide that it's time to call you in, and if I can, just let you run through what you just said, right? That's step one.
Yeah, the questionnaire.
Okay.
So
yeah.
let's talk about the human contamination while they're trying to track a deer. That's it's a major concern a lot of hunters have, and a lot of hunters really stress out, well, I don't want to walk around too much. I don't want to contaminate the area too much. And with a seasoned dog, I don't really feel like you can contaminate it too much. It's when you have the young dogs, the contamination really confusing for a young dog, because they don't have the problem solving experience, and the handler don't have all the experience to understand what that young dog is still doing yet. We're struggling to read that young dog. So when I go on a track that I know is heavily contaminated, that's not one I'm going to put my young dog on.
Okay.
But if it's a situation that's all I have is a young dog, of course we're going to go try it. But when you have a situation with a seasoned dog and a young dog, you're going to run a seasoned dog on a contaminated area. And I can tell you now that the dog is mature, they go through those contaminated areas like it never even happened. They understand what the human did and where the deer actually went.
Okay.
So, and do you know, I'm sure you do, how many times better a dog's nose is?
Then what?
Are they better than a deer, or?
No, I believe a deer has
Okay.
more olfactory senses.
Okay.
But I don't know what it is times better than a human. Probably a couple hundred times better, I would guess.
Yeah, right, for sure.
But I don't know. I don't know what that exact is.
Okay, so let's back up just a little bit. Okay, so we talked about the archery. I'm using a rifle or a shotgun, and it's rifle season. And I have the same scenario where I give you a call. It's like, I can't find my deer. I'm going to need some help. What different types of questions are you going to ask at that point that we need to be aware of?
So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the shot distance, and what weapon are you using, and are you have some sort of rifle rest? Are you free-handing it? Are you got another lead sled? A lot of those things really matter. And then the next question, after I know the distance, I'm going to ask you what zoom your scope is on.
Okay.
Because I've had hunters had deer at 25 yards and they completely missed the deer. Because their scope's all the way up on 9 or up on 10.
Yep.
So I say, well, most likely you missed that deer. And they'll be like, no, there's no way I missed that deer. And I'm like, well, you probably did. So if you know you hit the deer, I'm going to ask you, did you hear the bullet impact? How did that sound? What was the deer's reaction? Did it rear up? Did it mule kick? Did it drop straight to the ground? Did it hunch up? Did it run off fast? Did it run off bounding? Did it run off kind of like on a speed low, with the head down low? There's so many things that kind of tell me where the shot placement is with a gun. And then the final thing I'm going to ask you is, do you know exactly where that deer was standing? And most time with gun hunters, they don't.
Right.
It's somewhere in this general area.
You hope for snow at that point, I would assume.
Yeah.
So you can see some blood, hopefully, or some hair or something.
And I'm sure you get the yes. Okay. And then you have to make the decision whether you got to go out there and then do you only take one dog at a time, or do you take multiple dogs?
So the state only allows you to legally use one dog at a time.
Okay. And is there I don't want a best breed type dog for this, because you got a couple different breeds, or is it just how they're trained?
I don't believe there's a best breed. I believe, there's obviously your really short muzzled, like a pug or a boxer or a pit bull, bulldog. Those breeds are not known to have great olfactory senses, but not that they can't do it. They definitely could do it. I don't want to discredit any dog. I think it comes down to the trainer, how much experience they get that breed, and if that dog and that handler have a great bond and obedience work, there's no telling you what dog could do it.
Okay.
So I believe whatever breed that you are in love with, whatever breed works best for your family, whatever breed you like the way it looks, the way it sounds, whatever it is, whatever dog you love, you're going to put the work into that dog.
There you go.
For sure. And is there a retirement age on this type of thing with a dog?
There's most definitely a retirement age. So like my last dog was a wiener dog, and she was 11 years old when she passed away, but she was at a point where she was really slowing down tracking wise. I couldn't get much more than 1 or 2 tracks out of her day because she was just tired and didn't show the enthusiasm she did in her younger years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of dogs, their prime is between 5 and 8 years old for most breeds. But now if you had a bloodhound, most of your bloodhounds don't live past 8, 9, 10 years old.
Right.
So that's one thing you want to look at. The bloodhound's a phenomenal breed. It's a big breed. It's not a breed for me. It's not a breed I want to keep in my house because all my dogs are house pets. But the lifespan of a bloodhound's not there for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing you need to consider is, what kind of lifespan or working span do you want with that breed you're choosing?
Okay. So basically a dog that's got a longer nose is going to have more of a sense of smell than the shorter faced dogs.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And obviously, the bigger the breed, the longevity of the dog is less as well.
For sure.
Your smaller dogs are going to typically last and live longer.
Thus, why you're starting the next generation. You've got Sarge at 7. You've got 2 younger ones. You're bringing them up the ranks, and then it'll just you start that cycle of Sarge
again.
Yep, Sarge is going to retire, and watch those young guys go out into the wild blue yonder.
Well, my chase at work is slowing down, so maybe I need to retire. And just be
we all do.
Right, there you go.
Well, I tell you what is the biggest deer buck-wise that you have recovered? Because we're looking at some of the pictures you have here on Facebook, and there are some dandies.
So our largest free-range whitetail is, I think, right around the 200-inch mark, and that was down in Ohio, up around the Cedar Point area.
Wow.
We have done some enclosed high fence stuff. Last year we did here at the place of Mount Morris. That deer was over 300 inches. And that was a broke leg deer that was shot in the enclosure. And we went in there and tracked it at the 18-hour mark. And it's in an enclosure, so a lot of people think, well, that deer just can't get away.
Mm-hmm.
And which obviously it can't, but that deer still traveled 3/4 of a mile within the enclosure and was bedded at the highest point of the enclosure and inside of a huge blowdown oak tree. So they drove 2 side-by-sides and had 6, 7 guys looking for that deer all day.
Couldn't find
it.
Okay.
We come in the next morning and we found it, and the deer ran off, and Sergeant bayed that deer up, and the hunter was able to make an ethical, clean dispatch on that deer.
Okay.
I see he also poses next to morel mushrooms.
Yeah, so I dibbled to that a little bit on training him. The first year he really indicated them, then he started eating them. So,
smart dog.
So,
he probably started asking for butter.
So he got nixed from that job.
That's awesome.
That's pretty funny. Not gonna lie. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What does temperature play in a lot to it? Whether you have your October warm or your December cold.
So temperature is an amazing thing, and it's really not the temperature that we have to look at when it comes to hunting or tracking. It's the humidity. It's the rise or drop in pressure. So when it's still 100 degrees out, deer still need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So the deer are going to utilize whatever weather that day is best for scenting conditions so they can go on through navigation through the woods or wherever they are so they can smell.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's a high pressure bluebird day, the sun has heated the ground up. The ground is as hot as it's going to get. So whatever humidity is there is going straight up into the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible scenting conditions, and it's terrible for a deer. So a deer is not going to move.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the scenting conditions get better and the pressure changes and the humidity doesn't get evaporated, the deer will then start moving because they can utilize the moisture to smell. So you're more tracking. Yes, you're more tracking humidity versus how hot it is outside.
Okay. And they're using that sense of smell, obviously, for predation to know where it's safe to be, where it's safe not, or where it's not safe to be, or if they're trailing a doe or things of that nature. Correct?
Or to smell food.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're wanting that one certain apple tree, they need to be able to smell that apple tree, and the moisture and humidity has to be there to carry through the wind to their bedding area to know where to go find it.
Gotcha. So there you go, Danny. Start studying the weather.
Well, it's one of those things.
It
plays a part, right?
It's. I mean, we use wind and weather, rain, all that stuff together for our hunts. To try to plan our hunts. But obviously, it goes into so many other things in nature that we don't even think about. So
exactly.
Well, I have a question for you, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
What time or what weather or what time of day do you check your trail cameras? during the preseason? What are you looking for to go do it to minimize your damage to your area?
I'm looking for clear skies and low humidity. Number one, because if I'm walking, I don't want to create a bunch of sweat. The more humidity, the more scent I'm going to leave in an area.
You're spot on.
Okay. I mean, that's
but
my
a lot
thinking.
of hunters like, well, I like to go and it's going to rain the next day and then wash all my scent away. Where the next day, all that rain does is rejuvenate all the dry scent, the skin cells that fell off you, and now it gives that deer a timeline when you were there.
Gotcha.
So your bluebird days, high noon, the warmest part of the day is the best time to go in and check your cameras.
There you go. You can take your shirt off and go check your cameras.
Danny does his via phone now.
A couple of them, yeah.
So I tell you what, we're running just a tad long here, so let's take a break.
Okay, so before our break, I just want to remind everybody, go check out Miller's Deer Tracking Facebook page. Write down his phone number from the website or from the Facebook page. Get it in your phone. If you're out needing his services or you're in an area where you think you're going to need some help, give him a call. He'll help you find somebody if he can't get to you. So we just want to get the information out to the hunters out there. Don't be afraid just to make a call and get his opinion.
There you go. All right, we're going to step outside, take our next break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
All right, we're back. Third segment of the show. Danny's brother just chimed in with a reminder of a story that he needs to tell.
Yeah, we were up at the property. We were out hunting. Shot a doe. We let it go overnight. Came back. There was snow on the ground, and me and my brother hunted in the morning, and then we picked up the track. But it was kind of a little bit snowy, but we could see where we were going. And then all of a sudden, my neighbor's dogs came bolting through the woods, scared the heebie-jeebies out of us because we thought they were wolves.
Okay.
But I recognized who they were, and I yelled at them, and I told them, go find the deer, and took off, running through the woods. All of a sudden, we look up, and it's kind of just not moving, but circling.
Mm-hmm.
We get over there, and there, lo and behold, standing on top of the deer.
Dogs are there.
The dog earned a heart for its troubles.
You give the heart to the dog?
I gave the heart to the dog, and man, that dog was happier than a pig in mud, and he was gone.
There you go.
But, all right,
awesome.
So let's hear about your most memorable track. There's got to be something good, right?
There's honestly so many memorable tracks.
Pick a recent one from last year.
Or let me put it to you this way. What was a track that you were on that by using your dogs, the person you were tracking for, I know that there's a picture of a family that was on there, but the happiest moment for them, what was that for, like the younger youth firearm type person, or what's out there?
Yeah, so a lot of the youth season is a blast for us trackers, and the kids, to see the kids' excitement. You're there on the kids' typically first year they ever shot, so you get that excitement, the recovery with a dog. But the kids tend to seem to love the dog more than they love their deer that's laying there. Right. You know, they just want to pet the dog and see the dog and all that. But last year was, a very memorable track. The one that is the banner of my page is a family that was up, I think it's Tuscola County where we were at, and two ginormous thunderstorms came in on Sunday, post the hunt. The young man made the shot with I believe it was a 350 Legend, and he shot his target buck that they were after, and then the skies opened up, and it just poured. And the mom and dad they know it was going to be a long shot. So they go out there and they try tracking a little bit, and there's no evidence to be found. While they're there, it started raining once again, probably even harder. And I believe it was like over 1.5 inches or 2 inches of rain that came down through that nightfall.
Wow.
So they called me late Sunday night, and they're inquiring about using the dog. Is the dog able to smell after the rain? All these concerns they have. And I simply said, yes, dogs can track after the rain, especially if the deer is mortally shot. So if the deer is mortally shot, we have a higher chance of tracking after the rain. But ultimately, we don't know how much rain is too much rain for a dog until we just come try. So the problem lies then is I have to take a day off of work, so I have to lose a day's pay, and so I ask for a reasonable donation to compensate my efforts and my lost wages. And the dad was more than willing to make sure the day was productive for me financially. So we drove up there, and they're taking a long shot on my dogs at this point with the volume of rain came through. This was the most rain I've ever tracked after. So I was very nervous myself. So we start the dog at the shot site. Sarge tracks into the woods, and he's instantly nose right tight to the dirt. And I look back at the dad. I said, this is a good sign. He's not having to struggle to find scent. And Sarge goes down a deer run. He comes back, gives me the look, takes on a different deer run. And I told the dad, if Sarge keeps going, we're going to start following because he's got it. And I said he'd already done one check, so that means he's understanding the target that he needs to find. And 300 yards later, we were standing over the young man's 8-pointer.
Wow.
So the cool part of the story was they kept all of the siblings home from school to go on a field trip of tracking a deer that day. So that was a cool family experience. Everyone was super excited. We had enough people to help drag the deer out. It was just a high five and hugs moment.
I tell you what, and I don't know how old that youngster was, but man, I bet you he was so excited.
He was so happy he couldn't even talk.
Those are the best kind of memories. I tell you what, that
cool.
Family's going to have those memories forever.
So that's why I took a family portrait with Sarge on there, and I made that the header of my page because it was just one of those special days.
300 yards after a huge rain like that. Wow.
Two rains, yeah.
Two rains.
Not bad.
2 rains.
Wow.
That we know of. There could have rained more while we were sleeping.
True.
Incredible. All right. Couple questions for you coming down. Is your dog on a leash while you're tracking?
Yeah, state requires the dogs to be on a leash. There is no minimum or maximum leash length. But yes, my dogs are currently on a 30-foot leash.
When they are tracking, are they barking, or when they find the deer, are they howling, or what's the indicator is there an indicator that they use?
So I'm going to get to legalities first. So on public land, a dog is not allowed to voice, not allowed to bark on public land. That's a law. On private property, you can have a dog that voices. My dogs do not bark when they're following scent. They will bark if they get on like a rabbit scent or a fresh deer scent, but while trailing the wounded deer, my dogs are stone cold silent.
Is that trained to be silent?
I think it's just natural. I think the dogs naturally know the scent is old, so they know they need to be quiet through, so like a wolf, right? A wolf can't go through tracking and barking. Otherwise, they're never going to get up to the wounded, whatever they're trying to kill.
True.
Right.
So I think it's just natural for a dog.
It's
so I think a lot of your barking dogs are your coon dogs that are trailing hot, fresh scent. They're naturally going to voice.
Okay, so I'm going to open up a can of worms here.
No, boy.
That's the first thing I thought of when you said that they're not allowed to voice on public land. What about, people who run coon dogs? I've run behind coon dogs. They're a vocal dog. They're not on leash. They're cut loose. Or bear dogs.
Right.
So what?
I know the reason why that law has got put in place is so we're not harassing hunters that are hunting public land. That is the only reason.
Okay, because it's during deer season.
But during bear season, if you're on a bear stand and
correct me if I'm wrong. There's only certain areas you can run dogs in for bear. I think that's correct. I could be totally wrong on that.
Well, there's definitely certain dates, yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if there's restricted areas or not. I just know there's days where there's dates for hounds and there's dates for bait hunters.
Okay.
And then there's a point where they both interlap a little. They intercross a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Another question. So Sarge finds the deer. How do you reward him?
His reward is basically whatever he wants. So if he wants to tug on some hair, if he wants to wait till we start doing some field processing and we give him some chunks of the heart or chunks of the liver, it really varies. Sometimes he finds a deer and he doesn't care to do anything with the deer. So it's up to him. I'll toss him raw meat. Sometimes he eats it. Sometimes he doesn't. I think he just likes to find the deer and see how happy I am, and that's good enough for him.
That's awesome. He just wants to please everybody.
He gives them the stink eye, but wants them to be happy, right?
Right.
That is so awesome. And the comments are coming in that they love how Sarge is so photogenic. A little ham.
That comes with practice.
Right?
Oh, my. Yeah, the picture, pull that back up again. The one off the page there. I want to show that.
Which one?
The one with the family right there. We're going to put that back up. But that pose it's like he's part of that family. I mean, it's like he knows what to do. He's in his spot when you take the photo. I mean, is that something you trained him to do?
I train all my dogs to do that.
Okay.
And the first few deer we find, it's obviously a mess. They don't sit still. But, after I think last year we found 70-some deer. The year before we found close to 70 deer. The year before that we found 50-some deer. So when you start finding that many deer, the dog will literally he'll hold a pose until I tell him to come off it. So I tell him to pose up. He gets up there until I tell him to get off. He just sits there and takes the shots.
That's cool. That is so cool.
Better than some humans taking
Right,
it.
yeah. You can't get kids to sit still that long, let alone, getting dogs to sit like that. Jeez, oh, Pete. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So when do you think, I know some seasons are starting off, but usually you figure about youth season, the phone calls will start rolling in?
Yeah, so youth season this year is September 10th and 11th, which is also the Liberty Hunt for the disabled hunters, the veterans. So we're gonna try to get down to the Kentucky's opener, which is September 3rd for the velvet season. We're gonna go down there from the 3rd through the 7th, and then be back home, and then be ready for the 10th on our Liberty Hunt here.
Okay. I just got to thinking about talking about the different questions that you ask, and the different scenarios you've told us about that you've been out in that are challenging. What's one of the deciding factors when you say, no, I can't come out because I just don't think you've placed a good enough shot, or I don't think that deer was hit, or deer is dead? I mean, you got to run that over in your mind, I would assume.
So I'm a very brutal, honest person. When we go through our conversation, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. Mm-hmm. It's going to be my educated guess. Doesn't mean I'm right. And there's times where I'm 100% wrong. Mm-hmm. And if a hunter says, Robert, I want you, even after I tell you I don't think this and I don't think that, nothing's going your way,
right,
I'm still going to come.
Okay.
So the only time I'm probably not going to come is when it's during the busy time of the rut, when I know I have a 100% a fatal shot deer. That's going to trump over a deer I think is a superficial wound, because my end goal is to recover deer.
Absolutely.
Not to always appease a hunter because what he wants me to do or she wants me to do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go where I think the deer is dead and need to be found.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, you want right, to be successful.
We can't go on 20, 30 non-lethally shot deer for a dog. That's really going to stress a dog out. It's not productive for a dog. Dogs really feed off our emotions as a handler, and they feed off the hunter's emotions. And when they start going on a bunch of dead-end tracks, it really has a negative effect on a dog. So it's crucial as a handler to, I guess, do management on what my dog goes on and how often they go on them. And the end goal is I want to go on as many dead deer as I possibly can, and that's what we try to do.
That makes sense. Makes complete sense.
It does. It makes complete sense.
Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead. Let's take our last break, and we'll save the rest of the time here towards the end of the show. Let's see, there's one quick question here, because I already know the answer to this. Tammy wants to know, since you're so good at training dogs, are you good at training human children, too, if she wants to know? I think she wants you to train her kids to sit still.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not actually a great dog trainer. I'm not a good dog handler. I'm a very patient person. I do have 4 kids of my own, so I feel like I'm a pretty patient dad.
You have to
be. But in all honesty, I just trust my dogs. So I'm not a great dog trainer. I'm not a great dog handler. I'm very clear and blunt to everybody about that. I just put my dogs on a lot of deer scent every year, and when my dogs are working, I give them the time to problem solve. I give them the time to hang themselves or prove themselves. And at the end of the day, the dogs know more than I do.
That's a great way to put it.
There you go.
Absolutely.
They're the experts.
Yeah. So, in other words, they've got us trained.
Right.
So to speak. All right, let's step outside. We'll take our last break here. We come back. We'll cover a few more topics, and we'll wrap up the show. We'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
All right, last segment of the show. You got a question there in the break that you want to ask.
A real simple question. Do you track day or night? Is it better to do one or the other? Obviously, you've got your questions to start you off with, but day or night?
So the day or night's a great question. Nighttime is best for the dog, not so good for me. Daylight's great for me, not so good for the dog. So the happy medium for there is I like to track mostly at dawn and dusk is preferred. So, but when we have to, we do track 24/7, and we get there when it's appropriate due to the shot placement, the weather, and all that will dictate what time I want to put the dog on the ground to come find your deer.
And that's got to do, again, with humidity in the morning. You got that cooler air settling on the ground, holding scent?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
I tell you. And as we talk about, as we go through the seasons here, we're going to start off with you're going to be in Kentucky, which is a bow season, right? Bow,
yes, that's Kentucky.
Correct. Youth up here, we're going to get into October 1st. We're going to get into November. Do you find that the bow hunter, are you tending to trail more deer in October for bow hunting because of the shot placement, or does it get into November and again we have a shot placement issue? Do you see more troubles in one season than the other?
I think the troubles with archery season is the death on the whitetail is much slower. So the animals are able to travel much further. So the hunters get down too soon. They start tracking too soon. They end up pushing their whitetail that needs more time to die. So that's a lot of times with archery season, or maybe not a pass-through, so the blood trail is not very good, or you have what I call a hide slip from the arrow goes through, the hide slides covering the holes, it leaves no blood trail. Mm-hmm. So those are a lot of the problems with archery season. Come firearm season, the call volumes are still there, but there we're dealing with a lot of crippled deer, broken legs, broken shoulders, neck shots. There's a lot of superficial wounds on come firearm season. The firearm season problem lies is property permissions, number of hunters in the woods. So during firearm season, I only strictly track at nighttime for my safety and my dog's safety, and to respect the hunters that are all out there hunting.
Speaking of dog safety and your safety, have you ever been on a wounded deer track and had a close call or had a dog injured?
I've had one dog injured, and that was my dog Cypress that has passed away. She is a 20-pound wiener dog. We come up on a single lung shot archery buck, and the buck, instead of running away, it decided to charge us. And Cypress, being on a leash, she wasn't able to run away. She got tangled up in an autumn olive bush, and the big 8-pointer put the rack down on her, started beating her to the ground. And at the time, my hunter had his bow. He was able to put a dispatch shot on a deer. And the dog didn't have no bodily injuries. It was more of a mental injury from that dog that she never got over live deer after that. Whenever we'd find a deer alive, she would literally turn and go the other way.
Okay. Well, it makes sense.
Absolutely. It's traumatic. And they dogs tend to remember.
Well, speaking of a situation like that, I mean, I know there's a lot of rules and regs and things that we question as to why. But you got to have your dog on a cord or a leash. You've got to, they got to go in silent on public land. In a situation like that, I got to assume that if it's during a normal hunting season, only the hunter with you can have a legal weapon of that season to dispatch an animal. You can't dispatch an animal if you're put into a situation, I assume, correct?
Correct. Let's dive into that kind of. So in the state of Michigan, you can track with a dog on a leash 24/7.
Okay.
And the hunter cannot have a weapon with them.
The hunter
If you want cannot. If the hunter has a weapon with you, you need to be what we call as a certified tracker through the state of Michigan. The hoops to get to that is you need to pass a United Blood Trackers Test 1. You need to have your concealed pistol license. You submit that information to the state law division. They grant you an annual permission. Once you have your annual permission, every time you track and the hunter wants to bring the weapon of season, you have to call the Report All Poaching hotline and give the hunter's information, your information, and your location, and if you're tracking a buck or a doe.
Okay.
After the track is done, you have 12 hours to call back and report if the deer was found or if the deer was dispatched from the hunter. So the CPL comes in where if a deer was to charge my dog, like the instance with Cypress getting pinned to the ground, I could draw my handgun and dispatch that deer to protect my dog.
Okay.
Now, you better be very clear on that case, because if there's an investigation done, which would happen, you better make sure that you were protecting your dog's life, not just dispatching the deer for the hunter.
Gotcha.
Because the handler cannot dispatch the deer at all, only for our safety.
Okay. Rules and regs.
Rules and regs. Another question. How does your dogs react if there's coyotes in the area? From Greg Ryder.
I've never had a negative experience with the coyotes and the dogs tracking it. The dogs definitely indicate nervousness, but they have pushed on and still tracked the deer. We have only found one deer where there was a pack of coyotes that was feeding on it, and the coyotes started yipping at us. They kind of circled us a little bit, but we made enough commotion. The coyotes ran off. We went in and recovered the deer.
All right, cool. It sounds like they know their own their limits,
their pecking order.
Yeah.
So to
yeah,
speak.
That's not nothing I'm ever concerned about.
Okay. In the UP though, where there's wolves, that could be a concern, I would assume.
I would assume that's a major concern.
Yeah.
It's a huge concern. Just asking.
Yeah.
But yeah, have you ever tracked in the UP?
Have not. Nope.
Okay.
Let's touch back about the rules and regulations again.
Okay.
So with the certified tracker, you can track. The hunter can dispatch with a weapon of season after dark using a handheld flashlight to illuminate the live deer. So that is legal.
Okay, so the hunter can, but you cannot.
Yeah. So if it's during rifle season in the middle of the night, you can dispatch that deer with a rifle.
Okay, I did not know that.
Hey, things we learn.
Okay, so you may or may not know the question or the answer to this, but so you're tracking, it's rifle season. Does the hunter, I mean, I would, if I was the tracker, I would want the hunter to have the gun unloaded, but I assume he has to wait and load the firearm at the point of dispatch.
That is correct. So the gun needs to be unloaded. I always ask for the hunter's ammunition. The crossbow cannot be. I think the crossbow can be cocked. You just can't have an arrow in it.
Okay.
And the compound bow cannot have an arrow in it.
Oh,
I could be wrong about the crossbow. It might have to be uncocked, so don't hold me to that. But yeah, they definitely can't have a bolt or arrow knocked.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
The gun needs to be unloaded.
Yeah, that's just you're asking for, especially at night. You're just asking for trouble. You know,
Yeah.
you trip, all of a sudden you've got something stuck in your backside. Not
Absolutely.
good.
Not good.
So Tammy was asking about that, about dispatching the wounded deer, but it sounds like
the hunter can.
The hunter can.
Yes.
So
okay,
there you go. Like you said, it gets to that point. You know, he wants to find the deer to either, if it's dead, or to help end its suffering quicker than later. And like us as hunters, we want to do the same and give a quick, humane.
Absolutely.
You know, and then this kind of leads into, okay, I'm needing help. That's why you call the deer tracker, and he comes out and helps you right out.
Yeah, you know, and along those same lines too. You know, talking about you need private landowners' permission to cross property. That being said, you know, if you own hunting land somewhere up north or what have you, and you've got a neighbor, do the right thing. You know, let them cross that property and get to where that deer's at. You know, don't be that pain in the butt guy. I mean, you got a deer out there that's suffering.
You know
possibly.
what? It is an amazing thing. The stories, and I know he's probably heard these stories as well. You think you're on great terms with your neighbor, but for some reason when it comes to a deer, all of a sudden they put up the barbed wire fence and
the whole world changes.
You can't go across it, and it's like, it's amazing. It's just
or the first question they ask, which deer did you shoot, and then that will decide if you can go get them or not.
Oh, right, and then did you shoot my deer? Oh Lord,
there you go, my deer.
I've been accused of that, and it's like, really?
Well, speaking of that, along those lines, you may or may not know the answer to this question or never even thought of it, but do you find landowners more willing to help if it's within a deer co-op versus just private landowners side by side?
Absolutely. Co-ops are amazing to work with. They already know everybody. They know everyone's property lines. The mutual respect's already there. Co-ops are a beautiful thing to go track for and with. You know, over my years, I can say there's only maybe a few times a season where a landowner says no. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's because it's November 14th, and they don't want you tracking in their woods that night because they're going to be on the holy day of the November 15th. Mm-hmm. They don't want you in there blowing the deer out of their property because they want to sit open to gun season.
Yeah.
So November 14th is like a terrible day for a deer tracker to try to get permissions.
I can
Totally
understand
agree
that.
there. Speaking of tracking, what's your longest you've tracked and recovered?
Distance-wise?
Distance-wise.
It's probably in that 2.5 mile range. I'm going to guess. I don't know exactly the distance. And in those cases, it's a deer that's normally pushed. It's a stomach shot, liver shot, and the deer simply push that distance. I will tell you the longest deer that we tracked that was never tracked by a human was a little over 1.2 miles on a one lung liver stomach shot deer that was never pressured. And we came in at the 24-hour mark, and the deer went that far completely on its own.
Wow.
That goes to tell you what...
They're resilient, man.
They're resilient after they're injured to either just keep going or, just... It's to survive.
They're a tough animal, man. They are so tough.
I know, right? It's just...
Let's bring up, do they go to water? That's always a good one, isn't it?
There you go. Didn't think of that.
So how many deer I find in the water every year? Probably less than 5.
Okay.
So you figure we're finding 70 deer a season. We're finding less than 5 in water. Probably less than 10 near water. We find a lot of stomach shot deer that's not even near water. They bypass creeks or ponds. I think a lot of deer just want to get to an area they actually feel safe.
Looking to hunker down and try to recover whatever they think they can live through.
Yes, but I've never found a double lung shot or a heart shot deer in water. The deer that we do find in water are typically liver shot or stomach shot deer. Those do typically, when we do find them in water, is the shot placement.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Shot placement. We've heard shot placement a lot tonight. So that leads me to think, take your time, do your due diligence. Practice
whatever you're using.
Yeah.
Bow, crossbow, gun, slug gun, whatever you're using, practice with it. And don't do the old, well, I shot this last year and it was pretty good.
Yeah, it'll be good enough.
Yeah.
But more importantly, practice on hitting the exit on the animal, not the entrance.
Yeah, know where that arrow bullet is going to come out at.
Shoot for the exit. That's what I want people practicing. And then the second they need to practice is holding their form with a crossbow, because a lot of your rifle hunters switch to the crossbows. But as soon as they pull that trigger, they're peeking to see if they watch that 500 feet per second bolt go through there, which they'll never see. And they end up shooting the deer high or over its deer's back. So practice holding your form, looking through the scope, and you're going to more likely never need a dog.
Yep, don't pull off on the shot.
Well, that goes back to what you said about one of your questions that you asked. Are you using a lead sled or are you using a rest? That tremendously helps.
Absolutely. Before in the pre-show we were talking about shot placement, different firearms, different weapons to use. And you mentioned like down here in the southern region where a lot of straight wall cartridges are used. Give your thoughts on that, like a 450 or 350.
So they're deadly accurate. You cannot deny the accuracy of them. Where I'm finding problems is their long range knockdown kinetic energy is not there. So to me, it's basically a 100-yard gun, maybe 150 at best. And depending on the ammunition that you're shooting, a lot of these bullets are fragmenting, not giving a pass-through. Even at 50, 60, 70 yards, them 450s are hitting the deer accurately, but the bullet's going into 15, 20 pieces and not exiting. The entrance hole as big as your pinky. The deer are running 150, 200 yards, but the hunter's out there scratching their head because they cannot find a drop of blood.
Wow.
Similar to a muzzleloader. So then at that point, I don't know this. This is going to be an assumption. There's a lot of deer laying dead where the hunter thinks, I must have just missed because how I'm not finding any evidence.
Right, for sure. And then, like you said, and plus that goes going back to what we were just talking about practicing. And like you said, 150 yards, but is that truly your effective range?
Or the effective range of the weapon.
Of the weapon, maybe for you shooting on a rest at 150 yards, you hit the X all time. But let's just back it up a little bit, put it under conditions, put a brown animal in front of you, whatever.
Or even maybe...
Extra gear on,
you're right. There's a bunch of different factors that all of a sudden play into it. All of a sudden, now your effective range is now cut down to 100 or less.
Well, case in point, you can overshoot an animal as well. Case in point, I shot... This was, 6-7 years ago. I had 4 does walk out in front of me in a field. I was hunting on a field that was about 200, 250 yards long. And, I was really hunting the opposite end of the woodlot on a 7mm rim mag, a high-powered rifle. And the does walked in front of me at about 40, 45 yards. and I shot, and they all scatter, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know I didn't miss. There's no way I missed that deer. And I go out to where they were standing, no blood. I saw where they ran, and I walked 30, 40 yards before I found the first drop of blood, and then I found the deer probably 100 yards away, and the exit wound was the same size as entrance. It was so close that the cartridge never had time to expand and do the damage.
Yep.
You know, it was like it was a pass through, but it was just like poking a hole through it.
Exactly.
You know, because it was too powerful.
Right. So
if the terrain could have been differently, it might have been harder to find any blood that you found. So
luckily there was snow.
Depends on depending on what them deer are running through. If it's really thick CRP grass, which is nearly impossible to find blood in, and deer can jump left or right and throw you off, and you can walk by the deer 100 times over, which I found a lot of deer 50 yards away where the hunters walked by it for 8 hours straight.
Absolutely.
It was a perfect shot, but a dog was needed.
Yep. Luckily, mine dropped in the 2-track at the end of the
at the end of the field?
Yeah, around
Nice.
the corner where it made a little turn. So
you know, like my brother says, pay attention to the shot. Where was the deer? Where did it go? Landmarks. Because either you're going to be tracking it or you're going to be making a phone call and seeing if you can't get Sarge to come out and help you out.
Well,
I always advise if you have a buddy come track, let your buddy lead the blood tracking. You're emotionally charged. Your buddy's not.
Absolutely.
Let your buddy sit up there, calm, cool, collective. Let him figure it out. You keep marking the blood, and if your buddy loses it, let you maybe see if the deer made a turn on you. But I always never advise let the hunter do all the work because they're just not in the right mindset.
You know, I totally agree with that. How my cousin and I do it is we call it whoever gets on the hot track, and then they keep going. They're picking up the blood. They're on the track, but then they'll get to a point where be like, man, I'm losing it, and then my cousin will take over, or I'll take over, and then I'll do the circles till I pick something up, and we kind of leapfrog each other. But those are great things, and you know, it's just one of those things where teamwork. Obviously, you teamwork with Sarge, getting out there and rocking it out and finding these deer. Yeah, absolutely.
And use toilet paper.
Absolutely.
Mark the trails with toilet paper. It's such a blessing when you get there. You watch Sarge tracking the toilet paper marks, so you know the dog is doing what it's supposed to do. I'm also reading the dog because I know the dog's tracking exactly. I'm kind of getting a pattern of what that deer is doing with the toilet paper in my dog. It just makes the job 10 times easier for everybody.
Makes life a lot easier.
Go. Do you let anybody... go ahead.
I'll say even after it rains, you can still see the residual toilet paper there.
Yep. Do you let anybody else run your dogs if you're busy?
The only person that's run my dog is my younger son, Aiden. He's now 18. He's ran Sarge a couple times. He's ran Cypress a couple times. But no, I don't let no friends or other family members do it.
There you go.
Don't let anybody ruin your dog.
Is there any special diet that you need to feed them? Or is it just, you know, some real good dog food and move on?
No, my dogs eat the Purina turkey venison kibble. I do throw in some wet dog food. I do add raw liver, raw heart, and some blood time to time to spike their taste buds and target interest. But that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
Well, we're running out of time here.
Oh, we got to get to our questions. Absolutely.
You got to get your 4 in.
Yes, I do. These are questions we ask all our new interviewees. They're not hard. We won't throw you under any bus like we always like to say. So, you and Sarge have been called. You're on your way to a track. You're in your vehicle. You're driving along. What are you listening to on the radio?
A lot of times I'm not listening to anything.
Oh, you're getting
his mindset.
He's having a good pep talk with the dog.
I like to have the window down so the dog's getting acclimated to the weather, and we're just maybe him and I are just having a conversation about getting our game plan together.
There you go. All right. So if you're driving, you're not listening to anything. You got your windows rolled down. Do you have a snack in the truck, or are those off limits?
Oh no, I definitely have snacks. Probably the Nerd gummies. I think they are like little Nerd gummy candies.
Yep.
Eat the hell out of those. Or the strawberry flavored Starburst, and then I probably have some sort of energy drink going, which I mix that up nonstop because I can't drink the same one twice.
There you go. All right. So Mike,
the key was sugar, right?
The bottom line was sugar. You've invited Mike and Dan over for a dinner. What dinner would you say is your go-to venison meal or wild game meal that you would say, hey guys, you got to have this because it's the bomb? What would you cook us?
Unfortunately, it will not be wild game. I'm probably going to cook you some crock pot ribs.
I'm on for that.
That's good for ribs.
It is literally fall off your bone, tender, mind blowing.
All right, last question. We're sitting around after dinner. You're gonna look. We're sitting around the campfire. We're talking, and there's gonna be a story you want to tell us that resonates within you from your past. Whether you were young, whether it was a moment in time that you said, "Hey guys, you got to hear this story." What's your outdoor memory that you would tell us?
Well, that's a good question there. I think probably my first deer I ever shot, and unfortunately I wounded it, and I don't know, I got to say politically correct here. It was a traumatic way I had to end suffering without a weapon.
Okay, been there.
And so I started dragging this what to be was a fawn, and my dad, it was on public land, and my dad sees it. Keep in mind, I'm 12 years old now, and I'm running with a deer. So if that gives you anything. And my dad is stalk hunting this public land, which I had no idea where he was, and he sees me. He thinks I have a dog. I'm dragging a dog. And I lift it up and say, look, Dad, look what I got. And he just shakes his head like, why did you shoot that, son?
There you go. There you go.
That was probably, that will never leave my mind.
I get it.
I get it, too. I get it.
So there you go. There's our 4 questions we like to ask all our interviewees. So you did a good job.
I tell you what, we're going to let you go, but hang on with us here till we get down offline here. We'll chat for just a second. But everybody that's out there that's listening to the podcast, listening to the live stream, Danny, give them the webpage again there.
Go over to Facebook, check out Miller's Deer Tracking, jot down his phone number that's on the page in case you need some help while you're deer hunting this year, bow hunting, crossbow, gun season. Give him a shot if you get into trouble. If he can't help you, maybe he can get you in touch with somebody closer in your area if you're too far away. But yeah, make that call, see if they can help you to recover that animal and be more successful.
Yeah, put that in your phone because there's a lot of places here in Michigan you can get phone signal, but you can't get cell service internet service. So put that in there so you've got it on your hand in case you do need it. Go over to his webpage as well. Give him a like, follow, share, and same with us if you would, and share the show. It helps us. It helps the people who support us. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, and if you're listening on iTunes, go over and give us a review. That helps us as well. Next week, Danny,
Next week, we've got somebody who spent a week on Isle Royal camping, and for the week, there was a group of them. So we're going to have him on to talk about his experience on Isle Royal.
Awesome. Cannot wait for that.
I know, right? I'm excited.
I'm going to pick his brain because that's a bucket list item for me.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. So, all right, folks, that's going to do it for us this week. Make sure you tune in next Wednesday night, same time, 7:30 right here. We'll be talking about Isle Royal, camping and hiking up there. That'll do it for us this week. Y'all take care. We'll see you again next week.
This episode was brought to you by
PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Hacker Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal.